Japan is getting older, fast, with every one of its 47 prefectures posting a population drop in 2022, and death numbers hitting a record high of more than 1.5 million, while there were just 771,000 births last year. It's stirring up a big problem, both locally and globally. Japan is the oldest nation in the world. 28.7% of the population are 65 or older, making up 36.17 million. By 2036, people aged 65 and over will represent a third of the population. And the country's current birth rate is sitting at 1.3, which is way below the replacement level. Along with one of the lowest birth rates, Japan has one of the highest life expectancies in the world. But attitudes towards marriage and starting families have shifted in recent years, with more couples putting having children off due to work pressure and financial reasons. That poses a risk to Japan's society, future and economy, with a shrinking workforce and not enough young people to fill the gaps.
The manufacturing sector continues to leave Japan, which inevitably shrinks the industry. Then the population in the industry dwindles. Overall, technologies deteriorate, the number of workers decreases, and the market gets smaller.
The declining number of young people in the labor force has led to a shortage of workers in the country, and the aging of the workforce provokes a decline in production and innovation. Experts say Japan's current economic crisis is essentially a demographic crisis. An aging population and slower labor force growth slows the growth of GDP. Japan's GDP is predicted to grow by 1.3% in 2023 and 1.1% in 2024. The end of the baby boom led to a decline in labor force growth. Japan has the oldest workforce in the OECD, which means by 2060 there will be almost one elderly person for each person of working age. Some of the rural parts of Japan are at risk of disappearance, with the average age of a farmer standing at 68. In 2021, the number of commercial farms operating in the country was only around 1 million. The figure has been decreasing continuously since 2016, and it accounts only for 1.3% of the GDP. So far, the government has introduced a number of new policies to enhance childcare services and improve housing facilities for families with children. Some rural towns pay couples who live there to have children. There is even a government-supported, artificial intelligence-driven matchmaking service to address the crisis. But still, the population continues to decline. And Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida believes the country is on the brink of dysfunction, sliding towards a total collapse. Tulay Kalyon Haznedaroglu, TRT World.
For more on this, United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, John Wilmoth, joins me now from New York. Thank you very much for joining us today. So, John, what sectors are mostly at risk in Japan? And I'm not just referring to sectors in an economic sense, but more broadly in a social sense as well.
Well, if we could just back up for a minute, this topic of population aging it's receiving a lot of attention. There's a lot of discussion about this being a crisis, that countries are facing imminent economic collapse. And I think we need to, first of all, begin by noting that population aging is a sign of one of the greatest successes that we've had as a species. The lengthening of the human lifespan and the substantial reduction of premature mortality before the age of 65 or 70 years, it's gone almost to zero in a country like Japan. So this is happening because of something very good, and we should keep that in mind. It's come because of something good, but it does present certain challenges. Now, which parts of the economy or which parts of society are most at risk? I think the piece that you just showed laid out that there could be challenges across many parts of society. But again, it's important to understand two things to begin with. Number one, this is the result of something good, and number two, it's not going to go backwards. This is the future. This is the result of what we call the demographic transition, which is the shift towards longer lives and smaller families. It's happening all over the world. All countries are going through this. They're at different stages in that process, but they're all headed in the same direction toward having much older populations. This isn't something that we can sit around and say, oh, this is going to be a crisis, and throw up our hands and say it's a demographic cause. It's caused by demography. We need to address the issues that we need to find ways to adapt to living with older populations. So we cannot let this become a crisis. We must address the issues and find ways to adapt.